So I'm going to talk about today several items that came up. I'm going to go through a list and outline what we're being told are red flags to our financial well-being, or perhaps we're on the wrong path and we need to make a change. But I'm also going to dispel some of the incorrect notions that are implied in such lists. And so, as usual, dispelling the so-called internet wisdom out there. I'm going to help you see through some of this stuff, and perhaps maybe you also already know it all. But let's see what you think of these ideas that are floating around about all of the things you're doing wrong financially. And seeing that we're a channel about the thinking person's guide to living well, also known as Retire Early Lifestyle, it seems very appropriate to discuss the subject. What'd you get there, Angie?
Well, I found these seashells just now.
It's just beautiful out here. I understand New Zealand has very similar weather like this, like beach in the 60s most of the time, almost all year. It doesn't fluctuate too much, 60s and 70s. Not warm enough to swim or anything, but you can still enjoy the beach. Hey there, welcome back to Frank and Angie's Person's Thinking's Guide to Living Well. But first, let me show you what a beautiful spot this is. I'm really liking this spot a lot. I went to the beach the other day and it was so loud you couldn't hear anything when I was talking. Look how great the view is here. We got the ocean. We're not far at all. That's like 2 blocks. So we can go to the beach right after I make the video. I'm just not going to make the video on the beach. It just makes it hard to hear. So I ran into some whoppers again, and I thought I'd share them with you. Part of it is the idea that there are ways to know where we're going wrong. And there are different slants to this. Today's slant is going to be from the financial perspective. So one of the ways they're saying that you would know that you're on the wrong path financially is if your rent consumes half of your income. Now, this is a hot button issue because inflation is out of hand and people's rents are skyrocketing all over the globe, including places like Mexico and any place where there's a huge draw for people to move internationally. All of these places are seeing skyrocketing rents, but for America, it's been slowly inching upwards as far as the percentage. But here's the thing about that. My notion is this: you shouldn't be renting. If you're renting, something is wrong. Now, I know that nowadays in the financial circles, they teach people starting out that they should rent and not buy. But yet we're now telling people, when I use the word telling, I mean internet wisdom is now telling people that if their rent's consuming half their income, they're on the wrong path. Well, of course. I mean, but first you tell people that they shouldn't buy, they should rent. And then when the inevitable happens with the devaluation of the currency, which is happening globally, it causes people that are on quote-unquote average wages to lose purchasing power and therefore find themselves one day with the rent that is steadily consuming up to half their rent. So you hear me say things like this on this channel because we're Retire Early Lifestyle all our life for over 4 decades, and I'm going to tell you straight out, you shouldn't be renting at all, because if you aren't renting, then there's no way that the rent is going to creep up to half your income. Next is that your emergency fund is less than $1,000. Well, okay, look, if somebody's just starting out, both of these things might be true, but our goal should be, number one, is not to be renting, and number two, to start saving. We don't want to discourage, but we don't want to stay at that level where but I've read statistics that say what was the percentage? A pretty large percentage of the U.S. population can't come up with $400 for an emergency. And sadly, this is a product of the job culture where it puts you in a position of having to rely on employers and landlords and all these other people that don't necessarily do anything to improve your personal lot in life. In other words, their goals are to improve their own lots in life, not yours. So you're not really in control. The next one is that you don't really have a career, you have a job. Well, I covered this in the first one. You really should be working your way out of a job if that's where you're at. But the end goal isn't to have a job, and I dare say a person shouldn't start with a job at all unless they're in circumstances where they absolutely have no other choice. But the thing about people is they usually have a lot more choices than they think they do. And of course you should be out of debt. You shouldn't take on debt. That's a huge thing. We have done real estate deals in USA, and so we do talk about real estate a little bit on our channel. And I keep track of real estate. One of the things that I've noticed recently is people losing their homes because of personal debt. People taking loans out against their personal residence to spend on lifestyle or this or that. So a lot of these things on this list are things that if a person is totally starting out from scratch, you know, they're going to sound like they're in this category, and so let this be a warning if that's you, that you know, because what happens to people is that they will embrace perhaps some of these principles because they're starting out, but then they end up actually just getting stuck in them, and it becomes very challenging to get out of them. So you absolutely should be out of debt. So you shouldn't have gone into debt to get education. I know that that's the way that a lot of people do things in America, is the job thing and the education thing, but going into debt over it is a bad idea, and going into debt at all, even for business, is, I say this cautiously because I started out my career, I was in debt, and I was insolvent and didn't have any assets to my name, and I went into debt, but the debt in order to start a business. So it wasn't for consumer debt, it was to start a business. Even so, it was a tiny amount of debt compared to the return on investment. In other words, the amount of money I borrowed, I was able to get 8 times the amount I borrowed in my first year back. So it was tiny compared to the ROI of the opportunity. So there are very rare instances when debt could make sense in the right situation, but in most cases you shouldn't be in debt, period, and especially not student debt. So I won't go over all of these things, but I'll just mention the ones, in my opinion, that require a better explanation. One of the things on here was you transact with digital money, not cash. That's an interesting point, because that means that you're using bank cards or credit cards, or as opposed to cash. There are people that want to do away with cash. Very bad idea. Anytime you can't buy or sell anonymously means that you are giving up your liberty to whatever institution is attempting to take it away. Anytime you put yourself in a position where a stranger can determine whether you're worthy to be able to buy or sell, which is to say sustain yourself and your family as opposed to die of starvation, that's a very bad position to be in. So the ability to use cash or any anonymous way to buy or sell is actually one of the pillars of liberty. Just to be able to have that option where somebody can't just shut you off, you know, so you can buy food today. You overpay for little things. Well, occasionally, like we overpay once in a while when we're traveling, but on a regular basis it does add up. You don't really want to. This is something people do because when we live the delayed life plan, we are more likely to get on a quote-unquote treadmill where we're not really in control. And the way to get more in control is to become more self-sufficient. And one of the ways to do that is to do things yourself a little more, like people that make their own coffee. If you drink coffee, I gave up coffee 20 years ago. I don't even drink it, but I don't skimp. I drink kefir, which is made from, is a fermented milk product, and it's for my health. You lack marketable skill. Yes, we should always be constantly improving our skills so that we can put those skills together with whatever market forces are established at the moment in order to be able to increase our standard of living and improve our financial situation. We all have the ability to do that, and so mostly I find that lists like this seem to apply to a certain category of people that are very dependent on perhaps a low-paying job. They have no skills and they're in high rent districts, and it just is a sign that you really need to take charge, reorganize your life in a big way, and start focusing on changing these things little by little by becoming more self-sufficient and realizing perhaps that maybe the reason why a lot of these apply to us is because we need to make a complete change in the way we think about money and our relationship to money and our life. What do you think? If you see something that is put out as a sort of wisdom for young people, would you want to let those people know, based on your experience in life and your knowledge base, would you want people to know, would you want to correct them? Would you want to say, well, based on my experience, this is the life I've led, this is what I've done. I always love it when people comment on our videos and tell me things about their life, like a guy said, you know, in just one or two sentences, he summarized his life, and it gave me an amazing picture of what his life was like and the decisions he made. And I said to myself, that is an excellent example. Well, it was the guy that had always bought fixer-uppers and fixed them at his own convenience and timeline. He wasn't in any particular rush to do it, and whenever he got to it, he did it. Sometimes he did it in a year, sometimes he did it in 4 or 5 years. In the meantime, he didn't preoccupy himself with the workaday lifestyle. He lived on a very low, minimalist income, and yet in the long run, he allowed his real estate projects to, through inflation and the cost of real estate, as we've seen just in the last year, prices of real estate going up and up and up, he was able to increase his net worth substantially with what appears to be a very intentional lifestyle. Thank you for posting that in the comments. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts and have a wonderful day.